I'm very honored to welcome among us dear friend Ravi, Nana, Eleonora. I hope Mark has joined us as well. Jan is still somewhere in the clouds flying, but hopefully he will join us as well. And of course, Marina, who will act as a harvester. She's been part of all this evolution of the thoughts, and I'm sure she will be able to help us to capture not only the essence of the comments of our speakers, but also your comments and your participation and your interventions. And hopefully, after these 2 hours, we will expand our awareness and maybe even have some tangible guidance in which direction to go to try to participate in the co-creation of this concept of leadership that will actually serve people, planet, the higher consciousness, and start solving the issues and challenges that we're facing and not deepening them and causing even more destruction and more separation in this world. So let me just, I'm not going to read all the beautiful CVs of my colleagues because they're all impressive, inspiring guests. We publish them on social media. So please take a look. I'd like to use this time really for the direct engagement. And I propose the first topic. The topic is leading to peace and prosperity or to conflicts and destruction. Do we even have a capacity leading to peace and prosperity? Or what would it take in order to be able to lead in that direction? Can you even lead to peace and prosperity? Or is this something beyond leadership? And we need to tackle and address some other dimensions and other elements of our existence before we can even talk about leading. Or are we as a humanity basically capable only to lead towards conflicts and destructions? Is that some primary role that we have? I don't know. I really don't. But I'm sure our guests will offer us some of their important thoughts and help us to, and help us to explore this topic. But please, just raise your hand, interrupt, jump in, challenge the thoughts that we will share, and let's have a dynamic dialogue. Okay? Thank you very much. And now I will invite first our dear friend Ravi to kick off this session. And I see Mark joining us as well. Hello, Mark. Please then the initial inspiring speakers, please come in. And as I said before, if anybody in this group is invited or challenged, just raise your hand and we'll give you a floor. Ravi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Violeta. Thank you so much. As always, you are the catalyst, you are the anchor, and you are the chief inspirator. That is guiding not only us, but so many others in the world who are aligned with you, who believe in you and your thoughts, but somehow they are a little more lost today than they were when the challenge started. So I'm going to begin with 5 observations as to what has changed. And in that context, how do we all have to change too? And what does it mean for us? Now, first observation is that I may be summarizing something which you already know, but in the context, I do want to highlight these. That the New World Order in 1945 formalized multilateralism based on the rule of law, leading to decades of relative peace and prosperity. That international order is now being replaced by a multipolar world driven by transactionalism with scant regard for the rule of law. So the world is looking more anarchic. An impact of the absence of governance in international affairs, incited by the absence of a functioning government in the erstwhile major power. The second observation is that this process, though initiated by the West to decelerate the shifting balance of power towards the East, is instead likely to foster the emergence of a stronger East. If the US had maintained close alliances with Europe and Japan, they together would represent more than half the world economy, compared to a mere 20% of China and Russia. But with US burning its bridges with one and all, the process US wants to stop will gather greater momentum. Well, even if they had done nothing, the process is already going and is unstoppable. I'll give you one statistic. In 1980, European Union economy was 10 times China. Today, they are of the same size. And by 1950, China will be twice of European Union. Now, for all of us, co-travelers dedicated to ushering in a safer, more equitable, and more sustainable world, this has significant implications. We need to be cognizant of a few things. One, barring a few exceptions, most nations now openly function within the ambit of Max Weber's definition of the modern state. It's a political institution with a monopoly on legitimate use of force. But having said that, the march of civilization doesn't wait for the few who are in power. It's determined by the people they govern. A large majority of people in most countries are neither content nor happy with their governments. Rising inequality, raging unemployment, rampant corruption, degraded democracy to a level of government of the elite, by the elite, and for the elite. The current ways of doing business and governing nations cannot continue. And we have to be cognizant, and in my book, I've done research to show that a new global charter of people's rights is emerging with 3 preambles. 1, people all over the world have more that unites them than what divides them. They all seek justice, social justice, gender justice, racial justice, and a justice that is just, a justice with dignity. Preamble 2, lack of equity and not the clash of civilizations is the root cause of global fractures. The young and the marginalized are not interested in debating academic issues anymore. They are focused on questioning elitist versus inclusive, opacity versus transparency, top-down versus bottom-up, or authoritarianism versus collaboration. And preamble 3, the poor in the world will really matter hereafter. The rich and the powerful cannot hold on to power indefinitely. Those with voice and money will have to care for those without. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Only the political class, a small minority, helped by very big capitalists, are still stuck in a stationary time capsule. And my fourth observation, what can we all, more united and more determined than ever before, do together? First, to get out of this morass, we need to know how we got here. The nexus between owners of capital and government started 4 centuries ago. And in the last 4 decades, a few big capitalists have made capitalism virtually unreformable. My book with the same name evolves a compelling narrative that while capitalism prevailed as the dominant economic idea of the 20th century, peopleism is bound to emerge as the viable new economic architecture in the next century. Now, from our perspective, there are 3 types of people. 1, business and political leaders who are global decision makers. 2, people like us, traversing similar paths to change the trajectory of our future. And 3, the rest of the world. Now, I want to make a very provocative point here. Consciously or unconsciously, we spend most of our time with those who already subscribe to our thinking. This is not helping us get results. I agree that there are difficulties in connecting with the decision makers, but we need to start focusing on the third category. Who, along with us, are struggling to carve the new contours of a new future. What can we do to have us joining these discussions in hordes? At the moment, in all the conferences I speak to our address, it's not happening. And I'll tell you what I'm doing about it. Let's focus on four types of people. 3.4 billion young people, 15 to 39 years, comprising 41% of global population, don't accept status quo as destiny. Their technology-aided protests have acquired the confidence and the capability to change the narrative. It's difficult to ignore them. They know how to resurrect the potential of social media to make it a virtuous pillar of the age of truth. Consumers will use their enormous power to bring monoliths to their knees. A small number of Disney boycotts was enough to restore Jimmy Kimmel's shoe. 4 billion women of the world, led by 2 billion mothers among them, are demanding equality and parity in every sphere. Employees are taking the lead to ensure that DEI and ESG are not an on-off switch to suit political agenda. It's now the non-negotiable component of corporate survival kit. Like us, they believe that a safe new world and a livable planet is well within our reach. Violeta, you asked first the question, is peace and prosperity possible? Yes, it is. And we are going to have a world with it sooner than we can imagine today. More specifically, we need more to do much more to interact with corporate leaders and boards. They ultimately are decision makers, and they are really the force behind what politicians decide. And I think we have to make an exceptional case that their ability to survive lies not in political alliances, but in their readiness to accept the new ground reality and voluntarily transform themselves to become the key catalyst in advancing to the next phase of human knowledge. It needs one big leap from knowledge to wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge with heart, as Barbara mentioned earlier. We are entering the era of the survival of the wisest. And I'm honored to be among the so many wise people today. Thank you, Willem.
Thank you very much, Ravi, for this inspiring kickoff of a debate. and raising so many important questions. And let me bring on board Eleanor and ask her maybe to explore further on how can we change the narrative. You mentioned, Ravi, inclusion, that we're seeking inclusion. We're seeking to be part at the, to have a chair at the table of decision making, to reach out and touch minds, hearts, spirits of current leaders. So, Eleanor, what do you think? Can we do that? Shall we even bother to reach out to them? Is it worth it? Do we need to go and create a parallel world? What is your experience? How would you go about? Please unmute yourself, Eleanor.
Thank you, Violetta, for your question. I'm very honored to be here today. I'm an international leadership coach, and I work across Europe and also India, Russia, and Japan. And I have a lot of contact with leaders at all levels. And I must say, Violetta, that I see in our society today really a deep polarization. From one side, it feels like we are sliding into an abyss of dehumanization, I would say. Fear, disconnection, and loss of trust. But on the other side, and this is really parallel, I see small islands of and micro realities where people choose a different path. At the same time, can you imagine sliding into the abyss, the same feeling, and seeing island, microcosmos, micro realities where people are living differently. And these people are embracing diversity. They practice respect, and they experiment with co-elevation. These are islands, small islands of humanity. They may be small, but I think they are the seed for the future. And they are now showing us in this period of disconnection from everything and everybody, that there another way of living and also of leading is possible. And I must tell you, Violetta, that I think we are now in this historical moment, we are witnessing one of the poorest generations of global leaders in virtue and humanity. I don't need to mention names. They are obvious of all of us. They are what I could tell testosterone-driven leaders. And I'm saying that with a lot of respect. And let me be clear, the most of them are men, but there are also a few women who embody the same leadership style. And too many of them embrace anti-democratic and inhuman values. The perpetuation of privilege, the erosion of human rights, and the denial of gender equality. And the greed and the profit seeking are so extreme that the human being as a person is completely overshadowed. Dignity, care, empathy are systematically forgotten and denied. And here is a gender perspective, not an optional, it is crucial, because recognizing, for example, diversity, valuing all the voices is essential for the future of humanity. And I'm asking myself, and I'm asking also you, is this a coincidence that as more alpha male figures rise, we also see patriarchal pushback corroding human rights, especially the rights of women? This is my question. And I would like to give us a reminder. And we should remember that the true evolution of a society is measured by how it treats women. What I see among entrepreneurs, among executives, and so also here I see extremes. There is a mainstream still dominated by the old leadership style, old style entrepreneurs, and they build their power on control, exploitation, and fear. Let us take a look at the big tech companies, how subservient they are to the US president, for example. There is no courage and no limit to greed. Virtuous leadership always requires that leaders are connected with themselves, connected with others, connected with their body, and connected with the people they work with, and of course, connected with nature. And I see as a coach, a complete disconnection from any of this. And we as coaches, for us, it is a signal, a clear signal for toxic leadership. Mm-hmm. We call them derailers. Derailers are red flags, warning us that there is something that the leader is, of course, the leader is completely disconnected. And this impact the organization and their team seriously. On the meantime, I see also, and I interact also with the other side. There's a new generation of leaders that they are emerging now. Leaders who dare to experiment, to explore with vulnerability. That is to say, they are able to say, hey, people, I have no idea. I made a mistake. I don't know. I have no solution. So they show their vulnerability. And they also experiment with co-elevation and teamship. And they are the proof for me that business can be human and successful in the meantime. So I'm living in these extremes as a coach and also as a speaker, and I'm asking myself, how can we engage? What can we do? I think we should engage wherever humanity is at stake. A family level, in our communities, in our organization, anywhere we can foster collaboration. We can foster trust. We can foster co-elevation and cultivate a sense, a feeling of sisterhood and brotherhood, even with people that are completely different and far from us. I personally think that we should recognize the person, the human being, that the human being comes first before profit, before greed, before privilege, before fame, everything. The centrality of the human being, of the person. This is my priority, the priority that I see at the moment. Yeah. Thank you.
Eleanor, thank you very much for bringing this new, fresh, however, some really shared common awareness with dear friend Ravi. Bringing forward also the importance of bringing everyone along and seeing and hearing and giving space to 51% of the global population. Without those 51%, there wouldn't be any humanity. However, you also pointed out this very interesting element of parallel emerging safe spaces where a new type of mentality is emerging, which we could sense in Ravi's intervention as well. And the question is now here, do we emphasize and engage in and strengthen these parallel spaces? Or do we try to help and hold space for reinvention of the old? It's probably not right and wrong, but let's hear what Mark thinks about it. And where in this picture the economy of happiness comes. Mark, please, this floor is yours.
Thank you, Violetta. Thank you, Eleonora. So as an economist and also as a student of well-being and happiness, I think we're sort of in a state of psychosis where we've forgotten the origins, the meaning of the words in economics and business. The word economy means household management or stewardship. The word wealth means the conditions of well-being. The word happiness means the well-being of the soul. Thomas Jefferson once said, without virtue, happiness cannot be. So I think as humanity, we've sort of lost our way in what the great Seraphim Rose, the Russian Orthodox theologian out of San Francisco, said we would slide into an era of relativism and nihilism, run by sociopaths and psychopaths. And I always joke, I said, there's only a few of them. But what
How did he know?
how did he know in 1970 smoking drugs in San Francisco, right?
Right.
How could he be so prescient that we would actually be in the state of nihilism? In 70 years, my blame I lie on, in part, London, places where the occult has flourished probably since the Mithraic times of the Roman Empire, where we have forgotten that love is who we are. That is the only truth I can state. And I took a crack during COVID to rewrite the US Constitution and replace some of the words with love and see how it makes you feel inside of your soul. And then address the fundamental flaws that I see in our economy, which is we have a debt slavery system that has persisted since the dawn of accounting, which gave rise to the Medicis and the Venetians and London and the Dutch banking systems, in which we've allowed private corporations to create all the money in the form of debt. And then we can't even understand why we can't get out of this situation, why we always have to have eternal, never-ending war just to feed a system that is inherently anathema to God, a God of love. And I come at it from a Catholic perspective. And I can accuse all the leadership of incompetence or ineptitude, a lack of courage, to be very clear that if love is who we're created to be, then that is the ultimate aspiration of the consciousness of our civilization. And I'm with Eleanor. I think there are little islands. You know, if we turned off the news, we would find those islands right across the fence with our neighbor. The challenge is, well, how do we reboot the system that is clearly seemingly spiraling into, if we're not already in World War III, and we stop this nonsense and we reflect on the wisdom of civilizations like China, who I've advised. You know, China adopted the Shaokang society under Deng Xiaoping. Shaokang is a Confucian word, means well-being. And the West didn't have any idea. When I went there as an economist in 2003, nobody in the West even thought about well-being. So when I wrote my book, The Economics of Happiness, 2007, people thought, how can you combine economy and happiness? I said, because they're all about well-being. It's the fundamental foundation, I would argue, of an accounting system, not based on profit. Luca Pacioli and Leonardo da Vinci, who designed the double entry bookkeeping system in 1497 in Florence, said there was no such thing as profit in a guild society, a society of mutuality, and sharing. And today, the accountants of the world still don't have a definition of the word profit, and yet we teach our business students profit maximization. Now, what if love is the ultimate optimization algorithm? And so I've been working on new systems, practical systems, new banking and financial systems that say, if we create money, let's create it in line with well-being. And I've adopted a lot of the ideas of David Hawkins, who some of you probably have read his work on consciousness. If consciousness is logarithmic function and love is in the middle of that 1 to 1,000 scale, then the few of us on this in this call arguably, I think, would be in that higher consciousness area, like Ravi. And so then the interesting question, strategically, how do we create conditions in which we can encourage our young people to experience, even for a moment, those higher levels of consciousness, of love? And then, because right now, if I look at the United States, the distribution of consciousness is so poor, so low in the realms of fear and apathy, not in the 500 level of love or unconditional love that Hawkins, talked about and analyzed. So these are the conditions I think we can engender, encourage, because when we feel love, even for a split second, we know what's possible. And that this narcissistic, psychopathic nonsense we're living through now is just hopefully a bad dream. And my last reflection is I think we are emerging out of 2,000 years of an era of grace into a new era of glory. And Hawkins, if you read his work, he always ends with Gloria in excelsis Deo, the Latin. Oh, so glory is what we look forward to, what our hearts long for. And I know it sounds crazy for an economist who is obsessed with recreating the money system, but I honestly think it's an exciting future. And the other thing I want to say is I think we have the ability to pray against these psychopaths. We have the capacity for so much power, the power of love. The word power in French means to be able. So I think we've got, we might be a small little group, but we got a lot of things to, and wisdom, Rafi, to your point, where's the wisdom? Wasn't it T.S. Eliot says, where's the wisdom we've lost in knowledge? So
Mark, may I ask you something which you mentioned before? You said that you're working on different, metrics, and you are calculating and trying to bring this in an economical language. Do you think if we change and the criteria and the presentation of what it means to be successful, more being geared more towards well-being and happiness, would that make a difference? Can we push in this way? Do we have capacities or even, tools to do that? What's the level of confidence on your side?
We do have that. I work a lot with First Nations in Canada. And, they teach us, they remind us of what we've lost, the traditional teachings of the medicine wheel, that we're not a hierarchy of needs as Maslow. Maslow came to Alberta in the 1920s and he studied with the Blackfoot. And they taught him that the human being is mental, spiritual, physical, emotional. That is still the framework in terms of which they think. They never thought about money. The Polynesians invented money from seashells, and the Chinese adopted it and made coins out of it. So we have this like civilizational trauma about money. I'm convinced all of us, if you go to the root of conflict, it's always about money. And can we transcend that trauma? I think so. And I think it requires us to think about new, and it's beyond cryptocurrencies and that. So yes, I think there are practical ways of designing a new money system that is worthy of our affection. But very few people are committed to it. And I understand why, because there's entrenched interests to keep the system going, to have perpetual wars, because war is good for the money system and the money power. And so I'm not, I'm bold. I've written Pope Francis. I said, when are we going to stop this nonsense? When are we going to stop the acceptance of usury in our world? When are we going to actually live the Jubilee laws as the ancient Jews adopted from the Sumerians? These are the practical things we need to have conversations about.
Wow, I can already sense a very important element for the second part of the discussion, so I will keep them for that, but great to hear this optimistic, very tangible set of comments that we can grab and jointly, hopefully, move them to the core of our behavior in the society. Mark, this is a wonderful message from your side, and I will bring Nana now on board, and then I see a lot of people already commenting and sharing some thoughts in the comments, so I will invite you all to come on board and openly share your comments. Nana, you represent, let's say, a younger generation of managers. You were in executive positions for a very long time, even though you're still young. So how do you reflect? I saw you sharing lots of sort of little hearts and
reactions. Yeah.
So how do you feel in this discussion? What do you take, and what is your message to the question that we have on the table?
First of all, thank you very much, Violeta. Violeta is a dear friend of mine, and we've met through a hobby of mine that I will not touch right now. But I will first, let's say, develop our thought. And to be honest, when Violeta invited me, I thought, are you sure? Are you sure that I belong to this group and that I have something to contribute? But it is quite incredible when you find yourself in a situation you realize we kind of have very interlaced thoughts. And actually, when you were speaking, I realized the thought process or the thread that I had in my mind and I didn't prepare is exactly what I wanted to say. Now, I'm a lawyer and I'm a theater director, but let's start with the law at first, because that's my executive position. So my premise that you all shared as well, and I'll come back to this, is we are at the ultimate decaying moments of a system, and a new system of civilization is emerging. Yes, this is civilization that deprivileges women and creates empires and has very specific let's say, measures to tame people, to keep people in fear, to collect money, taxes, and I'm a tax lawyer, money, taxes, gold, children from people, and builds very, very decisive and very definitive structures, right? And this is a system that we built. When I wanted to study, I wanted to study just two things, either math or law. Why? Because they're both systems that tell you, that describe the civilization we live in, right? And when I first went to math, they start axiom and axiom. I was like, God, this is so boring. I'm not going to survive this, because what I imagine math is to create one rule that creates all the universe. All is one should be there not in axioms, but in equations. What I got was something completely different. So I changed. I was, the stellar student, and I changed, and I was a female student that was so-called the extraordinary student, working next to the work. And we were the privileged group, because it usually meant that we didn't have the grades to make it. So that was my first, let's say, encounter with the system. Obviously, women were treated, they said future lawyers, and in Slovene we have different gender for male and female in these forms. So they have future lawyers male and the students of law female. And I was like, okay. And ever since I was a child, I had this insane possibility that when a real, and this is Slovenia, yes, somebody's very appalled, and absolutely I agree, this is Slovenia, European Union, socialist country, bear that in mind, and we got comments like that. And I would be attending that, and from ever since I was a small child, and my mom and dad were really much at pair, they're very much of an equal couple, also raising my brother and me completely the same. But I would stand against such injustices. I would speak up. And let's say when I came to the exam and the professor didn't give me the top mark, even though I had all correct. I said, why? He said, oh my God, right, you're right. And you spoke up. And I'm like, yes, I did. So basically, law is a system that tells you what, that actually encrusts the basic values. And what are the basic values? I'm sorry to say, the basic values of European continental law is Roman law that is based on slavery. Yes, like Mark said. And thank you very much for that thought, because it's a very profound thought. And let's say tax law still, basically the tax law is the latest in line. It's the longest taking law. It changes the last. And let's say in Slovenia, it still encapsulates the values of our ex system. Socialism, we should all be the same. It's very ugly to be rich. We should tax you. So basically you find values. To make a very long story short, you find values that the system values and worships, and you find it and it's there. Okay, basic, do not murder, do not rape, do not kill, great, but everything else is pretty open. So basically, law is one of such system, and economy, Mark, you said very, very correctly, is another one. And basically all of that are built on certain premises, which right now are falling down, because the premises are based on fear, on people, the majority of people being afraid of losing jobs, not getting education, needing to work for grades. And basically right now, so the structure worked until there were very many more people who worked for people, who slaved for people. In modern times, we can say just work, right? 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. Really, they get you salary so that you can spend money in the industries that they own. Right. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but it's a system, right? And in this system, let's say we lived in socialism, but the system, women, yeah, all right, they serve reproductive rights. I was in an Ivy League university, and it was very clearly presented that women are mostly there because the men need to marry someone. I'm sorry to say it, but it sounded a little bit like that. That was very foreign to me coming from Slovenia, but this is what we faced. And in the United States, I met, there was what the value of a ring means. And all of it was mind blowing for me, and that people all looked the same, and that you needed to choose your marketing class because everybody was the same. But it's a system. It's a very valid, solid representation of the system we have. I call it civilization. And in my hobby and in my personal life, I have 2 daughters. I always ask, when did this, let's say, discrimination, for the lack of a better word, of the women started? And I tried to track it back, but I realized it's part of the civilization we live in. And with all of the things, as Mark said, if something doesn't make sense, it obviously makes sense for somebody who created the system. Okay, because somebody profits from that, and this is how this is perpetuated. Also, wild violence in the streets, everything, somebody has an interest in that. So, okay, so basically, and now comes, so I'm a lawyer in private practice. So I'm a lawyer in, let's say, in economic system. I work in private companies, almost live there too, yes. So, and one thing that you realize is when things are good, when money flows in, that's one stage. And then there are crises. And this is where the world changes completely. And this is where I would link to Eleonora, right? You say you have 2 parts of leaders, and I can tell you, I only met one. They're wonderful, inspiring leaders, usually at the time of the startups. They understand everything. They're wonderful. They're inclusive. They want to change the world. But then something happens. And it reminded me of a speech that Slovene ex-minister for health said about politicians. He said they're pretty normal until they're elected and take office. And then it looks like they get a visit from somebody. He didn't say alien, but he said it looks like they get a visit from someone and they change completely. The mindset changed and they're like a different person. And they all start playing one role. Why? Like in civilization, because it works. Simply because it works. Because you look at the biggest companies, the successful companies, and certain mechanism works. That's why you want to replicate them. Okay. So for me, the leaders that I see, a very funny thing happens. If you're a leader, especially if you're a founder, or then if you're a manager, that you're a long-time manager and slightly overpaid manager, you lose the sense of reality. You have a feeling that it is there because of you. It must be something very, very human, because it happens so very often that basically you lose compass. You think it's there because of me. Right? And you forget, especially as a manager, you forget that basically you didn't build this. It is there, that is entrusted to you. And I think the stewardship, like nature, like everything, a lot of things are just entrusted. They're not there because we made them, but we are supposed to manage them in the most responsible way. Right? And a lot of leaders, if not all of them, forget this after a certain time. They come with the greatest, I would say, they come with really sincere intentions, but then it's either peer pressure or the, or the sheer money and the volumes that flow in so easily that makes them think, that makes them really realize. And then, of course, also human lives of all the assistants, all the people, all the personnel, everything that you can buy with that becomes very, very relative. And I think this is where the decay of morality becomes. It's very, very difficult to then, trace your ethics, because if somebody talks back to you, you just replace them, right? You can replace your wife for a younger model, et cetera, et cetera. That crazy discussion that I've had for the first time in the United States, and we now have it in Europe and Slovenia as well. We're very good in taking over those type of values. Now, maybe just a concluding thought, because women's rights were also mentioned. And, people also ask me, do you feel discriminated? And I always said, well, no, I don't. Because in a scientific role, and I worked, as a top lawyer or as a general counsel, it's not a problem. The minute you move into the executive function, somehow it becomes a problem. It is very practical because you somehow struggle for power. And let's say, I think women, if, like Eleonora said, we're not on testosterone, but try to look at wholesome situation, we tend to be a slightly less bold and less aggressive. I'm not trying to generalize matters, but I'm trying to say we have a complementary view of the world. I sometimes say, thanks God we have male leaders, because they're so bold and they do not see, most of them, 5 centimeters further than their nose, which is good because they're bold and you can take actions. But it doesn't mean, but very, very interestingly, those men usually have women to take care of the administration, accounting, HR, and law. Right? Legal services. So you find that combination very often because there's somebody in the back trying to, read their consciousness. So I think in that sense, I see younger generations and they live in fear and they live in complete acceptance that they're a problem if they become pregnant. That is infuriating to me, because we humans, we recreate through women being pregnant. This is how it is. And somehow young women are not employed because they represent a problem, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into very operational, practical matters, but I see young women still living in fear, not understanding, their moral grounds, their power, whatever you may call it. And I always say to them when we talk to them, and I'm a mentor of many, many young women, I say, what, my problem in this society is I'm not a slave. I'm laughing, but most of the things would be much easier, especially with regard to the male leaders, if I was, or if I had the mentality to just bow down and I not talk back when I think it's necessary. So, and in the sense of, the islands that Eleonora, you mentioned, yes, actually, I think a little bit differently, because let's say in Slovenia, we have loads of countryside. We have very, very small hamlets. They're not even villages, they're hamlets. And people there live a different life. They don't follow television. They don't know the news. And basically, they don't have a feeling anything's wrong. Obviously, they've been through wars, but they would exchange food. They would exchange sometimes clothes for their children, because some children are bigger there. So basically, what I'm saying is, we hear their leaders. We know that they're psychopaths because they own the media, and this is what we hear. If we look at the countryside, we walk through very, very deep forests, and we have bear in the forests and wolves and all sorts, and lynx in the forests of Slovenia. So basically, if you go there, there's a different reality. And there's not a reality of psychopaths leading and destroying the world or the decaying morals. There's just that. So what I'm possibly inviting all of us is to reconsider, yes, there is an alternative, and the way forward is the alternative. It's not how do we make it happen again, but it is different. It is something that feels intrinsically right. I'm not going to talk about universal law, but this is basically what a law student is taught, that something which is universally right should be universal law. But it is something that we have possibly forgotten. It is something that is closer to tribal laws that could, segregate the land in the right way, not to destroy the population. It is closer to those villages I'm talking about. And it is, I'm not going to say not based on profit, that's going to stay, but it's really based on different values. I think I'm going to stop there and let people talk. Hopefully I was not too long. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Nana, also for your fresh perspective and raising even some additional important comments, especially related to the relationship between individuals, managers, and the system, and the way how the structures are leading us to sort of calibrate ourselves with the values that they represent. At the beginning of today's Connectathon, I challenged this and invited everyone to dare to change the structures, because if we want to move on and evolve and raise into higher level of consciousness, we cannot get stuck with existing structures. So hopefully we will continue to work on that together and allow ourselves to create a space within which new ideas that Ravi and Eleanor and Mark and you and Nana talked about. So I'm optimistic, really optimistic, even though I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I'm optimistic that because we already know how to articulate very clear messages, understanding what is not functioning. And as Mark said, going back and understand the words, what they really mean, right? So this is a perfect moment to invite you. Who was challenged enough to really come forward before we give the word to Marina to somehow wrap up this first part of the discussion? And maybe somebody would also want to address this question. Are we, in the way how we're structured today, even capable of leading the civilization of peace? Or are we designed to live the civilization of conflicts and war? Anybody? And even Ravi, Mark, Nana, and of course, Eleanor, you're welcome to come in again. Lori, please go ahead. I see you unmuted yourself. No? Anybody else want to come in?
Sorry.
Okay,
Yes. Now we have a lot of hands. Okay, let's go with Ravi first, then James, then Barbara, and then Nana again. Please.
Well, I am absolutely delighted and excited and inspired that there is so many good ideas with one common theme. And the unity among us is amazing. Now, I would like to make 3 or 4 points to highlight that what each of you have said is a way to progress. Referring to Eleonora's comment, the leaders are bad. I picked that word. We all know that. Now, my approach to this issue is that we are not going to be able to change all the bad leaders of the world. What I propose is, and I wrote a book of 280 pages, I have not criticized a single person who is living, but I've highlighted what are the bad things people do. And what I'm highlighting is that, look, forget about what you have been doing. Here is a way to change so that you can leave a legacy. So far, you have been after wealth. But if you want, as Mark said, wealth and happiness, there is a way. You can keep all your wealth. And what is the way to happiness? I'm very fond of relating this small quote. If you want happiness for a few hours, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go and have a game of golf or soccer, or to go to a disco or whatever you want. If you want happiness for a few years, win a lottery. But if you want a lifetime of happiness, you have to make others happy. And now, we can tell them that, look, people will admire a tyrant becoming good. Hey, what a change here. And he leaves a tremendous legacy of his own, like Bill Gates did. He flouted every law in every country when he popularized Windows. What people do today is a small portion of that. But he decided, like Warren Buffett, like so many others. In political field, we have the example of King Ashoka. I don't know if you have heard of it. He was an Indian king who fought the bloodiest war, bloodier than the Second World War. But he was so guilty, he changed his legacy. And he, according to most historians, is a king whose name shines and shines alone in the firmament of political processes. He became compassionate. He followed Buddhism. And he sent Buddhist emissaries towards east of India, not west of India. And that's why you say in all countries east of India, Japan, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, there is a respect for the elders. There's a search for truth. And they are not aggressive like the non-Buddhists are. Okay, then the third point is we are definitely going through a new system of civilization, as Nana so brilliantly said. And I have a very reason to be convinced about it. We started with the hunter-gatherers economy. We moved on to agricultural economy 13,000 years ago. We moved to industrial economy 7 centuries ago. We moved to knowledge economy 5 decades ago. Now, sorry, before knowledge, we had information economy 5 decades ago. Then we moved to knowledge economy. No, knowledge economy has created havoc. Those who have knowledge don't have power. And those who have power don't have knowledge. And those with power and having knowledge have decided neither to share power nor knowledge with anyone else. So now, Mark, you had asked how we can transcend from knowledge to wisdom. And I like to say that knowledge without wisdom is like water in a sand. It disappears with no trace left. Knowledge has no room for ethics. In wisdom, a non-negotiable aspect is ethics. Knowledge gives you intelligence to analyze all the facts, but with no regard for truth. And wisdom gives you the power to connect with your conscious, which is the word used by each one of you, which guides you, tells you automatically the truth. And a wise man, a wise person, woman, often behaves like a child. A child knows no hatred. A child believes everything in the world is possible. It's the child in us which is arisen today when we are all with Violeta and like-minded people like us. And that, you know, the days of Charles Darwin are over. The survival of the fittest era is ended. The new era requires collaboration. And collaboration can only come by making bridges, by compassion. And this transition to the next phase of wisdom economy, from knowledge economy to wisdom economy, unstoppable. Because the people in the world today are far, as in any other era, are far more virtuous than the rulers. And because of the new digital economy we have and the via social media we have, they will become more powerful, and we will soon, technology is commoditized today. We'll soon have platforms and websites which will only be talking about the truth. So therefore, I am saying is two factors. Let each of us do what it can. We should meet more and more corporate boards and boards of directors. I try and do that all the time and tell them that, look, you want to make profit for a quarter or a year, or like the Japanese do for 25 years. You don't have these problems in Japan. Even in the Chinese civilization, the Confucianism built on compassion. But if handful of capitalists have made capitalism which cannot unreformable, so we have to graduate from unreformable capitalism to an unfracturable democracy. And that's what the transition from capitalism to peopleism will bring about. Thank you. I took long, but I covered it.
Thank you, Ravi. No, it's very, you made such a important point, and it's really important that we have them recorded, that we can re-listen to them and continue the discussion. But let's bring James in and see how he can reflect to this discussion that is going on. Please, James.
First of all, I deeply appreciate you giving me the floor and having an opportunity to say something, and everything you all are saying is very profound and wonderful to listen to. There are a few things that really come to mind, you know, and Ravi was started to touch upon those then. Love and compassion. I used to be a prison officer, so I worked in a prison. And I worked in there for an entire year, and it became very obvious to me that the one thing that most people were completely, they had no idea what it was, and that was love and compassion. You know, I will never forget the eyes of a gentleman when I walked into the cell, and I said to him, I was like, how can I help you? What's going on? And he just gave me a blank stare, you know, as though you could just see for a moment, it was this question of, you actually care, you know, and that really left its mark on me, you know. And so from the Zoom before about stories, which was beautiful to listen to again, you know, to me, the stories that really light me up are the ones where you hear of people who they refuse to sacrifice their morals and their goodness and their decency, you know, in the face of adversity, in the face of these systems of control and these people who have power and knowledge and keep it for themselves and, you know, sort of put themselves on the top of the pyramid, so to speak. You know, it's the people who stand in the face of that and say, no, I'm going to love regardless. I'm going to have compassion regardless. I'm going to care about people regardless. And there's nothing you can do that will stop me from doing that, you know, and that really I find is truly beautiful. And if you were to weave that into the philosophy that if I was born in a forest garden with pristine water, beautiful food, the correct support systems which showed me what was around me and how to find the answers within so that there's no intermediary, and then I embody love and compassion, that's when we have, you know, to me at least, when we have sovereign, self-governed, self-embodied individuals that are like, you know, this isn't even about what your truth and my truth is, just feel it, you know, take your shoes and socks off, have a conversation about love, enjoy these, you know, these mushrooms and berries and fruits and vegetables, etc., and be in it. So, you know, we restore the pristine origins. Some of you might understand where I'm using those words from, but it makes sense to me. You know, we restore those origins, we restore what we should have had from the beginning, and then we become a single beacon of love and compassion. How can that be stopped? You know, 16 million forest gardens around the world. The UK is an entire flourishing garden. Wales is a flourishing garden, as Michael, if he's here, will understand. You know, there's no iPhone or Tesla or £50,000 ruby encrusted watch that will ever come close to that ideology, you know. And I think that even the people who I knew and met in prisons, they'd be changed by that, you know. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time. I appreciate you all. Thank you for allowing me to say a few sentences. It's lovely to hear what you're all talking about.
Wonderful, James. This restoration capacity, it's a very powerful model and framework within which we can regenerate. So thank you for bringing this thoughts to this discussion. Now we have Barbara and Nana and then Ferial and then Gavin, please.
Thank you. Just a few reflections to this very, very rich and deep conversation to complement with a few thoughts. What came to my mind is what we are facing today is the consciousness evolution. And you've probably read or know Bill Plotkin, who deep psychologist. He calls that humanity today is in adolescent stage. Or I think he calls it that the modern industrial growth society is in fact stuck in adolescent ego. And we all know when we are adolescents how we see the world and how we behave. We all went through it in some or the other way. And we are having opportunities to shift towards more adulthood, or as it was mentioned, towards more elderhood that have been forgotten. In some places, it's still there, thankfully, but truly in Western society, including in my own family, the notion of elderhood has truly been forgotten. And we have opportunity to bring that into our education, or better say, into ongoing learning, to remember or revitalize soul initiation, rites of passages, or simply say all kinds of rituals that have been lost, especially in the Western society. Simply like some of the schools are already using it, like nature is a classroom. It changes everything immediately, and so on and so forth. Of course, this all leads to shifting the kind of leadership that we will have. How can we expect that the future generations will have the leadership that will be distributed, focused more on facilitative processes, if they're not exposed to learning and education, the school systems? And this is really a big challenge that I think we need to in that. Second thing I want to briefly mention, that Mark so beautifully mentioned, the notion of well-being, that I have noticed. I work also extensively in experiments of well-being, and I see how challenging this is because it's very often misunderstood. And people understand that when we say well-being, they very often think this is more of a hedonic well-being, which means temporary pleasure, comfort.
Spas and good food, huh, Barbara?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, we forget that, in fact, what we are looking for is the genuine well-being, which is eudaimonia, as it calls, which is based really on our inner well-being, not just the outer. And that's what brings me to my own experience navigating, the high power circles and now working much more on grounds up communities. I have been changing in my own leadership extensively as I have been learning, and I continue. And what I have learned as I have been on a deep spiritual journey and learning from different spiritual traditions, from Buddhism to Sufi, and only lately Christianity, because we had aversion towards Roman Catholic, environment of a power and hierarchy and sinner and so on and so forth. I have seen that the more I am reconnecting with myself as a leader, I am changing my own presence. And with my own presence, I am changing the field around me. And the more I am courageous to be truly who I am as Barbara, and I think it's really for all of us, and it doesn't matter whether we are in the power structures or in communities or in families, anywhere. And I would not want to neglect, that we need to connect to the power structure. No, they are, each of us, we are everywhere. There are a number of very enlightened or very evolved conscious beings everywhere. We just have to find those individuals and maybe more focused, how we weave differently, how we expand our presence, as I was calling before, this Shambhala territory is growing. And the last thing I want to close is just reminding us of the notion of sacredness. Sacred means holy. And holy is the same origin as health, whole, holy. It's all connected, it's all wholeness. So bringing back this wholeness into the leadership with humility and with generosity. And I think these two values have been very often forgotten. What does it mean to be humble? And what does it mean to be generous? And not only towards humans, but really more than human world. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, especially this invitation of opening our hearts and minds to be able to sense people around us who actually share this kind of compassionate attitude towards the world. Maybe we too often think we are alone and we close ourselves not to be exposed and challenged too much. But as you say, you're right. There might be many more people around us than we think, but they all equally shy and try to stay in their own intimate space because they don't see others to connect with. So this is a very deep invitation to see with our heart, not only with our eyes. Nana, please.
Sorry, yes, just a little bit of trouble of unmuting myself. Yeah, these are very, very deep thoughts. And I think that, again, there's interconnectedness with the thought that I have in concluding my, let's say, passage, is maybe this current time, because we started that there's a decay, there's a civilization, there's certain brutality in leadership and everything. It is maybe we should just see it as the truth finally being revealed, because a lot of those, let's say, mechanisms that we see now in leaders who are leading the countries, we would see them in companies for decades and decades. And it so happens that maybe some of those leaders used to be businessmen. So it's not surprising that they would actually now lead the country as though they would lead their own business. So maybe, I mean, and here is something that it was a profound, realization also for me during the lockdowns, is I realized all of a sudden, but, obviously for health reasons and everything you may say, but then, certain of the measures were not, at least from a point of view of a lawyer, and even now, what can I say with all the wars raging around, is there isn't a mechanism against the decay of a civilization, because the basic premises of it, the basic legal premises of it also will not be necessarily there to aid us or to defend us. But this is when we should remember, if the elite, let's call them like that, they're like 1% to maximum 5%. And then there's 10% more of people who want to, who help them and abate them if you want them. But there's everybody else. So everybody else doesn't want war. Everybody else doesn't want decay and chaos. They want peace. They want their little garden in England, like James said, or in Slovenia, or they want to, go to the kindergarten, see their family, watch over their elders, learn from them. It's not like there's such a divide. My feeling is that there's way more of people who want peace and, steady prosperity and just, point to a humankind and new society building up, that there are those who we see, and basically I reiterate myself, we see them because they probably own all the media and all the programs that are being demonstrated. So like Barbara, and it was basically the same invitation. Let's remember our voice. Let's remember the vibration of our voice, because this will change the conversation. And as we know now, physically demonstrated by physicists, we can change the waters in our body. We can change the mood around us. Recently, apparently, the Austrian scientists realized that there's a quantum effect by which we can change literally our past events in our own life by something we do now. So there's so many things we don't know, but because we're presented with reality that we're supposed to follow. I'm trying to, invite us again. It's a system that we're all encrusted in, and we should try to see outside of it. So and it's again similar to Barbara. It's an invitation to spirituality, but also, if sometimes when things really get, condensed, it's the escape to nature. And I think we all have that in every country of the world. It is that. I think it was you, Violetta, who said that all the thing you need is a cold stream to run through your legs. Yes, it's exactly what you need, basically. And even in, I would say the embrace of nature, and then slowly finding who you are and what makes you you. Because also this decay, the way I see it, of civilization is a rite of passage for us, for our islands to get big and to realize who we are. Because you know what, sometimes it pushes you to the edge to realize what our actual strongest points and your qualities are, what your skills are. So thank you.
Wow, great the way how the discussion is going. We are basically narrowing, the way how I see it, those core messages that hopefully we'll take with us. And I wonder what Marina will tell us at the end, how she feels all these dynamics happening. Yes, indeed, this awareness of having the right, the internal right to change the reality based on your own authentic self. And through that, the thought is always first. Change the water and the reality around us. Beautiful. So, Stereo, the word is yours.
Thank you, Violetta. So I couldn't stop smiling as I'm listening to all of you the whole time, because you are the hope. I am, in the sense of the ones where things have started to switch on for. And Nana, I just love when you speak about being brave out there and going out and being courageous, because I think it is that moment where we do get to raise our voices. And I'm not talking about from arrogance, from pride, from ego, but from love, from compassion, because we start to see in our own selves. And I listened to Barbara when she was talking about this journey that we're on, right? Now we're on a civilizational journey, but I think there's also this recognition of we are on individual journeys. And so when we see that, when I look at myself back to 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and I look who I was back then, and I see who I am now, I'm sure Nana, Barbara, Violetta, any one of these others, we could see we have changed so much, right? And so it brings me to that place of even greater compassion for those who are still out there probably creating chaos, right, as leaders, because they're still on their journey. And I think the more that we can love harder and deeper and get up in their faces to say, I think it was James that said, no, we're no longer going to do that. So I think it is, as I said, not from the arrogance, but I remember some words from the historian Yuval Harari. He speaks about these myths that we believe. And it is these myths we then live into, myths like money, myths like countries, myths like all of these things. These are not real things. Borders, who decided where's the borders of a country? I mean, you go into Africa and you start drawing lines and say, well, this is now the African continent because we decided this is what it's going to be. So you go into India, you do the same. These are not real things. And it is a moment where every one of us in our leadership positions, in our spaces, and that leadership, Violetta, you speak about the evolution of that. It's not about taking charge and control. It is about being those courageous people now who, when others are still shrinking and feeling like a system is keeping on pulling them in, all of us, we were there Nana is a tax lawyer, you know, I was in architecture and whoever else. But the point is we were in a system and we still are. And there are days I find myself still being pulled by that system. But I also am aware and I keep pushing back and I keep. So what I'm saying is I think it is that. It is you, it is me as we stand up and we say, no, like James said, and we keep pushing back that, because I think something's going to change. And like our neuroscientist, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, you know, he talks about this left brain, right brain fight we've got going on. And for too long, we've invested into this left brain way of doing things because we thought it was bringing us progress and results, right? But in the end, when we look at what we've got now, as that civilization Barbara speaks about, it's just not good. It's not working for us. And so we should, you know, it's back to, okay, what is the right brain wanting? How do we start reconnecting? And I would say, we're talking about leadership, then it is, we got to go inwards. We have got to go and ask ourselves and these other leaders in the world, present them with ways, opportunities to go inwards, recognize those shadows, the things inside of us. Why do we have fear? Why do we have all these things? And ask ourselves, how do we change that? How do we walk in a much better way? Because I guarantee you, when I've spoken to leaders across the planet, I see the ones that are even so successful, right, in inverted commas, they still have something in them that yearns for something else. This past weekend, I was in Romania with my in-laws, and they own a small holding there. And I'm sitting amongst, wow, these grapevines and pears and peaches and apples. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, imagine a city where this is what we have. We can walk. What stops our governments from planting trees along every street? What? Why couldn't we pull off an apple and eat it? So I just think there is so much work. But I think it starts within you and within me. And so I also want to say thank you. Thank you because you're doing it. And I want to say thank you. Yeah. And I'll pass it on. Thank you, Violeta.
Thank you, Feriol. Thank you for bringing also this important point of reconnecting with nature and bringing it back. This industrial mindset just pulled us away, first from nature, then from each other, and then from ourselves, because that was the only one we could still stick in the structure that was designed in order to get this industrial structures going. But yes, awareness is here. So let's bravely walk the path. And Gavin, what do you say about this?
There's actually so much running through me that I hope this comes out with some sort of clarity. And Mark, I'm especially happy to have you here because it's very rare that I've encountered economists who understand what you've already expressed. And there's a deep curiosity in me in terms of how we kind of wound up where we are. So I might just mention a few things, and then I have a question for you, I guess, at the end. But firstly, I find the stories of words to be incredibly interesting and fascinating because there's, I think, a need to always put in some sort of moral veneer on any story. You know, I think it's a kind of a law of logic that human beings don't do anything unless they think they're doing the right thing. And it's amazing that we can twist the most incredible insanities into, you know, a belief that, you know, we're going in the right direction. And the story of capitalism, that word I find interesting. So Ravi mentioned, you know, in the Western civilization, we have a system of capitalism, which of course is the standard stock story, but I don't believe it at all. I mean, if one looks at what capitalism is, we don't have capitalism at all. Capitalism has never existed in any form that I can understand. You know, as you said, we have a system of debt slavery. You can't have a free market if the market is controlled. We have a casino in which the house always wins and everything flows up and you're paying to play. That's not at all what capitalism was supposed to be on. And even the idea of capitalism, I believe, is built on just two real moral imperatives. It's the idea that we can, by allowing capital to flow, that, you know, value will be determined by the people on the ground where it's at, and, you know, not from somewhere far away. And that if capitalism exists, then people are free to, you know, value will be rewarded, and you can find your way based on the value offer. And of course, none of things exist at all in the current system. It has nothing to do with anything. It's so far from reality that, I believe one needs to start changing that name and say, yes, what we have is a debt-based system of economics, and it's got nothing at all to do with capitalism or communism or anything else. Everywhere in the world, money flows according to power, and that we have a power-based control system. That's what we have, and money is a component of that. That's I guess the first thing I wanted to say, and then my question really is I'd love to know where I can find your work, because the questions of what other systems we could have and how money could work is something I'm super fascinated by.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you also for reminding us one more time that many systems are designed to do good, and then somehow they got lost in the way of implementation. So that is something we need to be mindful as well, also with everything we come up with, to make sure we manage potential negative externalities as well. I often say, if in the beginning of last century, in the description of the designing of the car, somebody would say to engineer, and make sure that the cars don't pollute, we would have a completely different transport today, right? But they didn't. So what can we learn from that? So thank you for really bringing this forward. And yes, Mark, if you maybe can put in the comment the link to your book or your work, would be lovely. Now I'm going to bring on board another very inspiring colleague, Michael. It's your turn, and then I will ask all of my guests today to prepare the wrap-up story, because after Mark, Marina will come on board with her sort of harvesting story, and then we'll get back to each of our guests again, asking for the visions or steps forward, also based on today's discussion. But Michael first.
I hope you weren't referring to me as an inspiring colleague.
Yes, to you,
That's
dear
wonderful.
Michael.
You may remember on the 17th of August in our chat page, you said, oh my God, you're going to have a session. Well, it happens that I am now at some unearthly hour tomorrow morning. But I just wanted to make a couple of comments on the words, because I missed the first hour, came in late. Ravi was speaking, and he just happened to say, we're moving out of this horrendous sort of survival of the fittest. And it immediately made me think of, because I'm seeing the words remember and reinvent and so forth, perhaps I could throw in the word reclaim. The original quote is survival of the fittest to survive. That's us. Those who are attuning ourselves back to nature, we're attuning ourselves to co-creation and working with each other. We are the survival, the ones who are fitted to survive. So it's like, there's all sorts of individual words that do the same sort of thing. The next person to talk was talking about the relationship within holy and whole. And I'm reminded that well and wild are etymologically the same word. And in the very first session, whilst you were leading, Violetta, Alexander put in the, the messages on chat, bewilder, be wilder. And if to be wild is to be well, then we need to just get overexcited and express ourselves. It's kind of to find the wild in us, to live in that moment. So it's not the past, it's not the present, it's always the internal. And how are we getting that out? Are we passionate about what we're doing and so forth? Are we reclaiming our right to be the ones that are surviving? Because we're meek, because we're humble, but because we're absolutely in love with ourselves.
Wow.
Tom.
Wow, thank you. We are in love with ourselves for sure. And the love and the life that we breathe in and out every second. And this is something that is way beyond the ego and way beyond the sort of self-centric self. It's in a way part of this cosmic quantum network, because love is light. And it comes from the core of the universe, whatever that is. Lovely. That's another dimension, how we can start looking at our interconnectedness and our joint collaboration. Thank you, Michael. And now, Marina, please, what have you heard? What is your harvesting gift for today?
Well, thank you. I'm absolutely inspired and blown out by the deepness, by the richness of today's discussion, because I think that it seems that the amount of meanings we have discussed today is enough for another book. You know, it's so powerful, so beautiful, and thank you all for such a generous contribution. I think that definitely we made maybe a small but a very profound leap towards what we are trying to reinvent and to create the new type of civilization about which Violetta was talking at the very beginning. So first of all, we all agreed that the current system, which was based on power, fear, oppression, and dominance, is in decay, and it tries to self-sustain and to somehow to reinvent itself, but we see more and more that these values, these approaches are not sufficient for today's challenges, and the speed at which the world is changing. And we spoke a lot about young generations today as well, and they are not only are afraid of this dominance and of their bosses and of the systems to which they belong. I would also like to say that there are lots of people, young people, who reject these values, this hierarchical dominance, this disrespect to the inner world, and to lack of profound respect to and honor of the inner world of any person, despite of their age, of their social group, or their background. I also would like to mention that we all agreed that the profound problem is disconnection to our inner self, to our virtues, to our inner values, and what we think is important, and maybe sometimes even betrayal of our inner values which are important for us. And I think that lots of problems of mental health are also with mental health are also connected to this betrayal of inner self to some extent. We also discussed that, and most of you have said that reconnection to nature, reconnection to their life in all the forms, to other people, to non-human beings, to natural environments, to soil, and we will speak about soil and connection to the land in our next discussions during Connectathon as well. So this idea of belonging and being the part of bigger system, I think it's also a remedy and an answer to what could be done in order to heal ourselves, to heal from trauma, be it personal trauma, or collective trauma, or even historical trauma, or trauma for the whole humanity. We also discussed that it's really important to have courage and at the same time generosity in the relationships between personality and system. And sometimes systems are so oppressive and they are so cruel that they can somehow deform ourselves and damage our inner selves. And in this case, it's really important to be connected to ourselves in order to sustain our inner core, but at the same time, we need some courage in order to protect our inner borders, not with rejection or with neglect, but with love and compassion, and speak aloud when something is when we see unfairness, when we see the violation of some rights. And also, it was very interesting that we spoke about justice and equality and inclusion, and at the same time, humility and generosity, and returning to their notions of moral compass and the importance of bridging of knowledge and ethics. And Ferial mentioned Jan McGilchrist, who said about this right hemisphere and left hemisphere brain. And it's really important that the idea is not either or. It's about both. It's about integrating. And I think that Ravi's idea of knowledge, which is mostly a sort of scientific approach, it is left brain, and ethics and morality and love and compassion, which is mostly connected to our whole holistic approach, holistic understanding of the world through our right brain. I think that's precisely the integration which brings us to wisdom economy about which Ravi was talking. Also, I would like to say about, we spoke a lot about media and education as the means of this peaceful evolution and maybe even peaceful revolution of thought and of civilization and of the basics of human leadership. And I think that it's really important for us to support, first of all, to support and to create these spaces of sharing as today, and maybe to use all the opportunities to share these notions of connectedness and of compassion and of wisdom, and bringing back ethics to leadership and moral values and virtues to the decision-making process. And speaking about education, I think it's so important that we mentioned that education must not only provide knowledge, some academic systems, but also to provide this deep connectedness to ethics, to morality, to respect to nature, to respect to cultures, to diversity, and at the same time bringing these ideas of unity and inclusion. And finally, two very important things which I think that we should continue discussing in the future is remembering the true meanings of the words. And that was a very interesting highlight, that we now have the meanings, we have the names and the titles to some specific processes and approaches which were initially created with absolutely different intentions. And it's really important to return to the basic notions, to the basic terms and descriptions of the processes, and share it with people, because most people are perceiving this without any reflection on it. And finally, I would like to finish with the idea of this connectedness and of not being fighters and opponents, but mostly being the learning from nature again. Alexander likes this metaphor of the rhizomic system in the forest. And I would like to suggest you the quotation. Unfortunately, I don't remember the author, but the idea is, so the word-to-word quote is, the trees that falls doesn't fail. It's about, even if we see the decay, even if they see that the traditional forms of leadership are not conducive to the new challenges, not only of humanity, but the whole world, and the whole situation with nature, with environment, with our social systems, with politics, with economics. It is not a about claiming and rejecting and blaming and fighting. It's mostly about inclusion of this and incorporation this knowledge in order new sprouts of new civilization, new ideas and new knowledge and new relationships could emerge. And let us be the gardeners who create this new garden of humanity. Thank you for your sharing. That was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much, Marina, for this rich harvesting summary. And it's something to write down and then act upon, and we will continue to do so. Now, I'd like to ask my guests just for final words. Please keep in mind we have 10 more minutes before we have to close this session because another one is coming. There is another group of speakers already waiting. But before I pass the word on, I'd like to say that I'm so immensely grateful for all your interventions. I know that my speakers didn't get as much time as we thought they will, and I hope they feel actually excited for the stream that they opened and for the comments that we got back from all of you. They were rich, they were authentic, they were personal, and they touched not only our minds, but our hearts too. And that's the way how we need to go forward. But still, let's start this time with Nana. What would be your final message?
Right. My final message, I wrote it down in between, so I'll read it out. You know that I like writing scripts. So it is a few sentences, so bear with me. The night is darkest before the dawn, and this is season of resilience. How do we move forward? There's a chance we simply do not know, as we have lived and helped co-create the system that now indebts and limits us. We have been builders, enablers, or at least witnesses of a system that is rapidly unraveling. Next grounding, it is not in knowledge, but in wisdom, almost in intuition, in surrender to self, and yes, ultimately to love. It is realizing who you are, getting to know the vibration of your real inner voice, your truth, your essence. It is time to prepare, so nourish your peace within, allow your genuinity to surge and inner trust to lead. Be patient and trust you are here now for a good reason.
We are here now for a good reason. Thank you, Nana. And I'd like to move on now to Mark, please.
I just want to know why there's two women from Ljubljana. I've cycled through Slovenia, and I agree. I think I'm a forester too, so I did observe the joy in villages, and I think the truth goes back to getting back to the land and nature, and I think there we will rediscover the wisdom. It's right in front of us.
Well, Mark, I hope we will meet once at the conference here, and I'm actually moderating this from my mountain hut up in the Savinien Alps. So this wife of the countryside is with us.
My other shout out is, why is this wisdom coming from the Slavic people? I mean, in a nice way, saying thank you for reminding us of sometimes in the West we've forgotten who we are. So thank you for what you endured over the last 7 years and coming through that with this reminder of the joy that, and my final comment is, joy transcends happiness. And in my work in analyzing and doing surveys of well-being, the #1 statistical correlate to life satisfaction is self-rated joy.
Thank you for creating this space of joy for us today. And let's keep it in our hearts and remind ourselves of these moments when we might be challenged by the structures and systems around us. And Eleanor, you haven't spoken much, but you really sent many important vibes to this discussion. So what is your take at the end?
I'd like to share with you what I think as a coach, that is the most important thing that we can cultivate. I think it's not the case for the people here this evening, but we should engage where transformation begins within ourselves. And if I may say, with a lot of respect, especially men must embrace this inner work. It is what is failing in this moment, humanity. What is inner work? This is reflection. This is self-awareness. This is the courage to confront one's own biases, patterns. And so the capacity to work with oneself, with myself. And this is the foundation of evolved and thoughtful leadership. And this is the cornerstone of a more equitable society. So change cannot start from outside. It must start within. This is not obvious. Please believe me, this is not obvious. And only when we cultivate self-knowledge, empathy, and courage the courage to be vulnerable, and also the courage to be compassionate, we can lead in a way that truly uplifts others, and in a way that nurtures collaboration, trust, and a shared growth, not only for us, for humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleonora. Thank you for speaking. I can feel that you speak from your heart, from your experiences, and thank you for this very sincere invitation that we reach, and especially our dear colleagues, our dear men who we love dearly, and we keep inviting to awaken their inner beauty and ask and start acting from the connection between heart and mind. Women don't want to take over. We just want to live a good, inclusive, dynamic, joyful life. And so we believe, as you said, that this can be done only together, in collaboration, when 100% of humanity acts together. And I think today's session and the Connectathon is playing an important role in that, because as we can see, we are well represented, openly speaking. And what is even more important, we are listening to each other. Last but not least, Ravi, my deep admiration to you and to your work, and especially for giving us so much time to be able to reach across generations and dive into the wisdom that you represent and we are walking towards. Meeting you in such a humble way and you opening your space to all of us. And we listen with our hearts and we try to remember. Please, your concluding words.
Well, actually, I think I am charmed and inspired by one key input from every word that was spoken. I think there is a genuine, natural desire in each of us to discover what we have within. And I think the famous Sufi saint Rumi summed it up very well. I wish someone would gift me to me, because inside me there is infinite treasure of wisdom. We spoke about holism as well as holism with W as well as H. And I like to convey that this is a great concept in leadership. We all live under the same sky, but we all have a different view of the horizon. Many leaders believe that they have a 360-degree view, even if they have a small view. And therefore, they take their decisions. But they need also to realize that every decision they take impacts people they don't know, people on the periphery, and so much of the world around us. We live in a quantum world. Every choice a stranger makes in a different part of the world impacts us. So a great leader cannot be satisfied with the 360-degree view. He has to put himself, herself on the shoes of all others, known and unknown, and take another 360-degree view from their perspective. So great leadership, in my view, is a 720-degree view. 360 view from your perspective, and another 360-degree view from the perspective of all others. We talk of wisdom leadership. And I like to conclude by saying that I have analyzed in my book, this has come out only recently, actually. And I have analyzed what are the traits of a wisdom leader. And I call it the ABC of leadership. A for awareness. That's right. Oh, I feel so honored. A for awareness. Awareness of self. Awareness of the world around, what is happening, and awareness of the potential of technology today. That's very essential to change the world we want it to change. Technology is a tool. Can we use it to our advantage or let it lead us astray? And third one, the third awareness, the second trait is bridge building. We need to build bridges. We not destroy bridges which are existing. And the classic example, we've done a lot of analysis on how Nelson Mandela succeeded in building bridges, which are the ideal case studies on how every leader should follow that path. And third is compassion. And if one follows the ABC of wisdom leaders, then one will truly subscribe to the view that life is not about having more, but being more. That's why we are called human beings, not human havings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you all for this fantastic 2 hours. As I said in the introduction, I feel really free, more than I ever felt before. And this is just another proof why. Being connected to all of you, I can be authentic. To be connected to all of you, I have the strength to act. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the next session. In 2 minutes, we will start with the presenting circles, healing ourselves in community. We talked a lot about the community, and this will be the next section. Stay with us. Please don't leave, and enjoy yet another deep discussion about things that matter. Thank you very much to all. Thank you, my dear guests. You were wonderful, and I'm sure this is not the last time we have engaged.